We can also sit on the back. Sit. Yeah. Please sit together. I think. So I have all the speakers together. Yeah. But there is also a screen there. It's okay. Wherever you put film. So. Yeah, I understand. But maybe I sit there. There is some mic here. Okay, let's start. We are all here, I think. Maria, you can sit wherever you want. Welcome, everyone. Today in the BK talk, you can keep sitting. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. This is a very Javier sentence. For the ones online, for the ones in live, thank you so much for coming today. I am today replacing Javier, which is a very interesting and privileged position. But I want to thank the BK public program to give us a space to the Pedagogies of Feminism within the week that we are putting together. It was really important for us to have this Tuesday in exactly this week, and I know it required quite some work, so thank you for that. Let's first start introducing myself. I'm Irene Luque. I'm assistant professor at the urban design section. I will be the moderator today. There is a lot of text there, but I actually focus a lot in radical spatial imagination. I'm a person who works in mainstreaming alternative design, and I very much focus on teaching as a way to engage on hacking the system, an oppressive system we live in. And today I'm very happily and proudly saying that I'm a feminist, and we will see later what that means. This is part of, so the Tuesday is the day 2, which is yesterday. There were many of you, I see very similar faces, other new ones, which is nice. But this whole week is a full program organized by many different people. And it was really interesting to put this together and to welcome all of you on this. So please feel free to keep joining us and feel free to jump in if you haven't jumped yet in all the events. Today is really about positioning pedagogies of feminism, and I cannot do that better than our speakers, which I have them here, and Renske, Roberto, Amber, Lara, Els, and Maria. And I will present each one of them later on, but I first wanted to be honest to you on what we asked them to prepare. So it was about positioning pedagogies of feminism, and which each one of them think about, from the more practice-driven and from the more informal pedagogy to the more formalized or even institutionalized pedagogies of feminism. But I don't want to just listen them, and I think they only not want to listen themselves, and the debate is usually a small time, so please grab your phone. Go to mentimeter.com. If you don't know, there is always on your side someone who knows, because it's something we use. And please just write a keyword or something that comes to your mind immediately when you talk about pedagogy. Today is really about sharing discourse. I hope the online also can join. Culture of learning, a method, thought, ways, theory, curriculum, transmission, approach of teaching, organization, reflection, guidance. I find this very meaningful because when I was investigating about pedagogies, I don't think there is a fixated understanding of what pedagogies mean, in the sense of like, there is no objective, there is no neutral teaching. Teaching is coming more often, learning also, empathy, knowing the living institution, relation student-teacher. Okay. You can always add later because we will keep track of these things. Next one. There are 3 only, so don't worry. I'm not going to have to do the whole night with the phone. Is the previous one? Yes. What does feminism mean to you? The billion-dollar question of the week. You can change the code. I think you have to reput to yes. Revolution. Freedom, care, equity, empowering, a way to understand life, respect, future, justice, protest, hope, equal rights, representativeness, open to others. Ooh, it becomes difficult to read. Equality, same possibilities, representation, inclusivity, optimism, rebellion, hope, liberation. Okay. I keep it here. And then the last one. Thank you, Renske, for doing this. Okay, name a value that you have used to design in your education, in your life, in your practice, anywhere. Care, equity, empathy, sharing, attention, environmentalism, community, openness, complexity, companionship, beautiful, beauty, solidarity, shared, usefulness, biodiversity, critical, connection, justice, of course, critical, togetherness, I think I said that one already, social equality, reciprocity, recognition, radical design. Okay, we feel very comfortable talking about values. That's nice. I'm just preparing you for this. Today, in Pedagogies of Feminism, is not about designing only for women. Pedagogies of Feminism is not discussed for that. Today, it's about talking about feminist values, which I think is very core. And I have to say that yesterday, after the day we had mapping everything that happened around the tracking or timelining what has happened in this faculty, I had to change this presentation at 2 a.m. because I could not keep talking about designing for women. So today is talking about values that I wrote here before knowing what you will write, but many of them resonate because many of them are the ones that I use. And I definitely think feminist values can be changing in each of one of us because each one of us have deal with different struggles or with different opportunities. But we all can share some of these values. So I had this manifesto who opened my eyes 2 weeks ago, and Juliana, I don't know if she's around, but she gave it to me and put it in my table in the desk. And it was talking about that it's called Feminist for the 99%. And the idea is that there are two types of feminists. The one who race towards equal rights, and somehow they just race to become a man. And the ones who actually navigate systemic oppression and understand that to actually dismantle the system we are oppressed, we need to tackle other questions like colonialism, capitalism, and other systemic issues. And then for me, it was an eye-opening of like, we cannot look just at gender. It's also about race, it's also about class, and it's about many other conditions that shape who we are. So definitely it's about identities and values rather than just genders. This is a very important moment because today is also to recognize that sometimes feminism has been heavily prosecuted. I start with this because yesterday was a really inspiring moment when Anna Voss, one of the main participants of the Women Studies section in the 1970s, she talks this anecdote when they wanted to build a seminar, and then the dean responded to them that they should be knitting. That should be the process of what they do in that seminar. That happened in this faculty. And then, of course, they responded with this drawing, because the output of their seminar was not to be a cake or a knitting process. Those same women made a change in this faculty, made a history in how actually social housing is right now designed in the Netherlands. Those women were yesterday together, many of them, and many of who we have studied them, coming together to really track what they have been doing and what happened. And it was really scary to see that many of those women came out with the conclusion that there has been a feminist winter, and I think Lara can tell you a lot about it. But this timeline that we mapped yesterday, which we did it with the Het Nieuw Institute, and we will collaboratively build up on that, and anyone is welcome to join us in that process. It was really to talk about how feminism has been navigated through the years of the faculty and where are we at now. And I can't stop thinking in this moment, because this yellow line is exactly where this year was. And there was a sticker there in 2026, my Spanish came, talking about section, room, budget, position in education. And I could not stop thinking on how this needs to be related to today's talk. I think it's important today, we are not going to discuss in what we design, but today we are going to focus on how we design. And I cannot stop giving an example which helped me a lot in my process of how we design. This is Chandigarh, and I think many of you know, and if you don't, you should study, because it's a very interesting project. But what I find incredibly amazing is that I personally admire many of these works for many years, but what I never knew till a few years ago is that the person behind a big part of this plan was Jane Drew, who was a woman who was working for Le Corbusier and really making a difference in how to do designing. And she was not just in the background developing research or processes. She pioneered what a participatory methodology means in 1950. She defined how to engage with local communities, and she defined how to make architecture more human. To me, she meant a pivotal point of the focus on the how, because this woman is untold, and this woman is not taught in many of our disciplinary lessons. If we don't name it, we lose it. This is a sentence from yesterday's workshop, an intergenerational, intersectional workshop about how we engage in this faculty in feminism. So today, we have Pedagogies of Feminism, plural, because any of these people who are in this room and any of you represent a very different perspective on what feminism means, but also on what pedagogy means. And we need to engage in that, in the how and not only in the what. I'm going to start. Today we start with Els. I'm going to try to not present each one of them by what they wrote in their bio, but what I know from them. The reason Els is here, and I have to tell this anecdote, the first time I told her, like, hey, I want you to come to talk about pedagogies of feminism, she was like, huh? Me? Why?
I'm still am.
She is, for me, the principle of what pedagogies of feminism means. She has been a person who has been navigating, feminism, because anyone in our faculty who wanted to engage in feminists or in values or in critical thinking went to you. I personally entered this faculty pregnant and with a lot of difficulties, and I met a colleague who I could engage with and talk about oppression in a very open way. And to me, she's an inspiring teacher who today is retired, who had an amazing track record as an urbanist and an architect, but that I wanted to bring here today to celebrate and to tell the untold stories of women like her, who maybe are not a star architect or maybe are not a famous, let's say, female role model. But for me, she became a role model because there are so many of us here doing that, and we are so unrecognized. So, Els, go ahead.
So, is there a table where I can hide under? Thank you for all these compliments. That makes me super nervous. Rens, did you change all the... Now I can... Okay. You've seen them all. I had a very nervous week last week because I had to organize these 5 minutes in my head. And after the question of Irene, it kind of exploded in, I think, maybe 50 years of memories or something like that. Anyway, I thought if I think I cannot talk about pedagogies, I hardly can pronounce it, but I could tell something about what my practice in these years looked like, and that was quite chaotic, you can see that. It's, the underline is when I graduated, and the top line is 2020. I once made it for a lecture about entrepreneurship, and I'm not such a good entrepreneur, but somehow on the right side you can see all education from the start and kind of growing in the crisis, because then kind of the office exploded and we had 4 bubbles left, so we needed teaching to survive. That's how I got here. And that's, but you can see it is not a line, and it's not logical, and it's not, and it is in that way super complex. So that's kind of the image of my practice. And that was one part. And what does feminism mean in that? And I think for me, feminism is a way of looking at life and the world. And because I couldn't explain it to myself, and I think I can't, I started drawing, and it was the drawing that came out. That this is how I look at life and the societal structure we live in as a kind of a solid house which is founded on the beams of capitalism and supported by exclusion, exploitation, racism, sexism, and colonialism. Well, that's nice, isn't it? And that's but that's the hidden fundament, and because it all is under the roof of the Declaration of Human Rights, and everybody happy. So that's a kind of contradiction which I think is crucial for me in understanding what's going on. That when you hear something, you say, let's think about it. I don't believe it straight away. Because this contradiction is a kind of, when you hear things, what's going on. And in that way, thinking about pedagogies of feminism, it's about pedagogies of critical thinking. And I think when we studied, we had a lot of it. I remember when I entered this building almost 12 years ago, there was a lecture of Wouter van Stiphout on mapping Detroit by Bungie. I don't know if you know that, but that for me was also kind of revealing. That was mapping how many black kids were ridden over by cars, where in Detroit. That was mapping about how many rats lived where. That was mapping how money moved through the city. So that's a kind of a very radical way of mapping and not the standard way of mapping of urban plans. And I think that's super inspiring and that should be taught. That was in design and politics. I think it doesn't exist anymore. And thinking about that, I think this school is the place to teach critical thinking, because somehow practice isn't. Because practice is, you have your clients, you have your assignments, it's project by project. And in every project you do what you learned and you kind of develop, but you cannot develop you need your seeds and the basic of critical thinking to grow on. And here I started typing because I thought this should be clear. This kind of process in my professional life was internalizing the tools of my profession and this critical thinking and of course everything else. And somehow it blends and you work with it and you write in it and you draw with it. And it blends in the language of my profession. I cannot talk with somebody from who's making the streets and who's doing the sewage about critical thinking and feminist theories. You have another discussion, but it's in the way you work. And I thought blending is a kind of a crucial word and internalizing. But the basic should be, I think, in this school, the same as with your professional tools. Critical thinking is a professional tool. This was the last one I said. And the main question is, how does the way you look at life show in our tools, structure, program, and space, but also in daily life, in policies, in governance, and in processes? And you might go on in almost everything. And what yesterday brought me, and I thought that was super interesting, Anna, I call it critical thinking, she called it reflective thinking. So, and I think in education, no matter what form it has, you need a kind of in-between space for the reflective thinking and the in-between space for experimenting. And this combination gives you the tools to develop your critical thinking in practice and to be able to work with it. Well, that's what I had to say about it.
Thank you. I'm going to now introduce Amber. I'm sorry I'm giving you the back, but now I'm giving them the front. Amber, I could read it, but I think they can read it. I'm going to tell why you're here. And you're here because you are a student who is inspiring us so much, every day. Yesterday you also were speaking about it. But I think to me, as a mentor, as a tutor actually of your graduation project, you are inspiring me and you are teaching me a lot about feminism and pedagogies. And I think there is never this relationship between teacher and student when we always have to just give, but we also receive a lot. And the reason you're here is because you are a graduation student in the process and embodying a lot of things that are not visible in this faculty. So I want to give you voice to vocalize and to speak out of those struggles.
Okay, thank you. Wait, this is... Yes. So Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. I feel so honored by your beautiful words. And I was also questioning, why am I here today? And we had a conversation about that, because I was also, just like Els said, preparing this in 5 minutes brings so much into my head. And what does it mean, feminist pedagogy? What does it mean to be a feminist? And so many things I want to say. So you're looking now at what I would call an attempt at making the trajectory of my education of the past years. So I kind of wanted to lay out for myself what were main events in my education that brought me here today. And I think it shows really nice the difference between the institutionalized way of educating, very horizontal way, how it's typically organized up until today, and it ends actually at feminist pedagogy that I've received from Irene and Caroline and many other teachers here at the TU Delft. So to go in it very short, first I was at the University of Ghent in Belgium, and the slogan is "Dare to Think" there. But I think when I was actually at this university, I did not dare to think yet, especially not in my design practice, because the studios were always very hierarchical, and you kind of get into this role of wanting to please the tutors, so you're very driven to the end result, and you take their word for granted in a way also. And something that really changed for me in that is following some courses of anthropology. So I really wanted to use also this moment to talk about interdisciplinarity and the importance for that in these pedagogies, because anthropology really dared me to step out of my own worldview. In Dutch we call it wereldbeelden. I think it's very nice to recognize that there are multiple of those. And yeah, then I kind of shifted into a more humanistic approach. Before I would say I was more of a problem solver, because I was also taught as an engineer. But this humanistic approach was still really embodying an idea of the expert. So I thought I'm an expert because I'm studying this, and I want to give people agency and I want to engage participation, but I still saw myself really as an expert in design. And then I came to the TU Delft. And there, actually, my first design course was from Els. And it's really funny that you say that you don't know why, or you were asked also for the feminist pedagogies, but looking back at it, I think you changed a lot for me in designing. I remember the first day we had the design studio, you took us to the botanical garden, and we sat down there, and it was sunny still, which doesn't happen a lot in the Netherlands. And we just discussed very easily what was a studio, and I felt such a peace from you, and not really an output-driven mentality. And I also remember that you really stressed on the fact that the faculty is a place to experiment and not a place where you have to think about realistic things. So that really dared me to also go more into critical thinking. So I started to see university as a playground to discover new things. And I really went deep into post-humanism then. And that actually led me then to ethics of care and feminist political ecology, which are all fancy words that actually led to feminist pedagogies, which I didn't really know before. But actually, I also wanted to say something else, and that's the next slide, because before, in this hierarchical way of teaching, we were all taught about the canon of architecture. And in Ghent, for example, I cannot speak for TU Delft because I graduated in my bachelor's in Ghent. The canon looked a bit like how it also looks here. So this is the room there, the hallway over there. And it really makes me very angry always when I walk around there. It's like these white men, old men, some women, looking down at you as if this is the only perspective, and it's still enhancing it. It makes me very sad. Yeah. But going back to this one then, what I actually wanted to go towards is my graduation project. And in my graduation project, I really felt for the first time what it is to be guided by tutors that practice feminist pedagogies. And that's also what you were saying, Irene, and also with Caroline, I really experienced it a lot, that there is a very horizontal way of knowledge exchange. I also remember this moment when we were having a meeting with Caroline and other graduation students, and I asked a question to Caroline, and she said, Marach will answer, because she knows, and she was another graduate student. And I think that was such a beautiful positioning from also Caroline, and Marach really helped me with that. And I think it creates such a safe basis, and it allowed me also to learn way more, in a way, because you get this responsibility from yourself as a student to explore. Yeah, and I want very briefly, because I think I'm already going over time, this led me to question, because my research is about the refugee camps of Western Sahara in Algeria, and I started with the question, what can an urbanist, or what can I do as a spatial planner in indigenous people's fight for self-determination? And I was really struggling with that, because I feel like this practice has actually done more wrong to indigenous peoples than it has done good. So it's been very often used as a product for colonialism. But next to that, I had a big fascination for these people and how they are using their space. And I could not actually unify this idea of what can I do, and I'm very interested in what can I learn from them. But it was only until Irene also challenged me to actually name women and feminism and the matriarchy inside of this, that it came out that actually through looking at different types of organizing space in a way that is outside of patriarchy, I could reposition myself as an urban designer in this, and I could step away from my role as the expert that I was talking about before. Yeah, and we came to this beautiful collection of matriarchal patterns that were derived from a research from critical situated anthropological research of indigenous societies that then I applied to the Sahrawi people. And you can really see, actually, I was doing some research also on feminist pedagogies, that a lot of the values that these matriarchal societies embody are aligned with feminist pedagogies. So these values are healing-centered, equity, balance, guide without rule, there is no hierarchy, an absence of a strong, forceful maintaining of order. So a lot of these values, they are aligned with this feminist pedagogy, and I think, yeah, it's, I don't know what else to say, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amber. Now we move to Renske. And actually, she has a big list of things that she's doing in practice, but I actually really wanted to bring you in because practice matters. And there is a lot of pedagogy happening in practice, and it's very much overlooked too. And I actually really was fascinated by the idea you are mapping with this community, of course, with this big group that you represent today, feminist spatial practice. And I am really eager to understand how that can connect and also engage in these pedagogies of feminism within an institution like this one.
Well, thank you. Does it work? Yes. Thank you for inviting me. Just to be clear, as Irene already told, today I'm here on behalf of a global community called Feminist Spatial Practices. We are a collective of artists, designers, scholars all around space who actually celebrate the diversity of feminist spatial practice. And I need to... Oh yeah, this works. And we are all more or less inspired by this quote by Elke Krasny: feminist spatial practices are multidimensional and multifaceted expressions of thinking and acting with an aim to build spatial justice and enable better caring in a world defined by ideologies of injustice and regimes of inequity. And we all came together after an open call by Bryony Roberts and Abriana Aiken, who made a huge diagram, chronogram, because we all felt feminisms are myriad, are countless. There's a huge diversity in it. And personally, I never felt related to feminism or dared to say, like, oh, I align with that, up until I saw this diagram. And I thought, oh, but this is actually what I'm doing, alternative materialities. What do we have more? Like collaborative practices, embodied theories. Oh, this is me. Shit, maybe I am a feminist. So when I saw this open call, and I think there's here a little bit more, I was like, I need to join these two ladies and let's see what we can do together. So in this open call, it was a Zoom chat, basically getting to know each other, talking about what feminism might mean for us, how we can collaborate on this. And today, what I want to present or show is actually how we in the past 1.5 years started to organize online programs, also in-person meetups to just craft together, talk together, organize things together. And this all led to an online platform we have made and launched last October, in which basically the initial diagram is now an online archive where you can see at this point more than 600 practices that are in the range of feminist spatial practices. And I think this is the video that explains a little bit about how does it go. Do I need to do something? Yeah, I think Renske.
There are two main interfaces to browse through the cataloged entries, the first of which is the tapestry. This interactive map allows you to pan and zoom into different sections. As you zoom further into each area, the points slowly expand, revealing pixelated patterns derived from weaving structures documented by Annie Albers in the late 1960s. Zooming further still, additional information is revealed about each entry. Limited excerpts offer a preview of the content contained, and clicking on an entry opens a modal containing its full description and additional meta information. In addition to being able to browse entries through this initial view which groups entries thematically, two alternative sorting methods can be toggled between. The first by category, which reveals the subcategorizations that have been assigned to each entry, and the second by time zone, providing a loose representation of the entry's location on Earth without an explicit demarcation of borders, states, or countries. Within all three views, filters can be applied to limit the themes or categories being shown. As these filters are added, the tapestry responds to the quantity of entries that match the filter parameters, revealing more or less of the individual entries' patterns and text as space allows. You will also notice the background shape layer shifts in color, scale, and density. The shapes each correspond with the categories applied to each entry and represent the occurrence of each category, either in relation to the theme they are occurring within or in relation to the total number of entries present. As you apply different filters, the website saves these combinations, providing a history of how you've used the site and allow you to quickly return to previous combinations of filters. There is also a predictive search that can be used to further refine the entries visible to you when browsing. The index view provides an accessible alternative to browsing the entries, allowing for the same application of filters and search terms within an indexical format. In addition to the filter controls, there are also toggleable headings that allow you to sort the returned entries by year, name, contributor, category, or theme. I want to end with a brief thought and question that occurred to me as we worked on this project. Web design is beholden to the monoculture created by big tech companies, User interaction paradigms, our expectation of how virtual space should look and feel, are trained through monopolization of the market. For example, I wonder how many of us will be accessing the site on our iPhone or Android device. It also makes me wonder how a project like this could continue to evolve if it existed on a piece of custom hardware, something built for and within the community it represents.
I think this is it, yes. So we launched this platform in New York in October, and for us, it's this tool that we always wanted to have. Also, if you think about Pedagogies of Feminism, this is like, oh, you have an interest in it. What is it? What diversity do we have? Can we practice it as a form of resistance? Is it a form of figuring out how other people's work with care? So for us, this has become a tool of empowerment, a tool of teaching. We're now also developing, supported by the REARC Foundation, an actually course for people that are interested, that work with this tool also, because you have maybe the big line, but then you want to have the practices that actually do it or show it. And I would like to ask you to visit the website, use it, and start also submitting, of course, because right now there are only 600 in it, but there can be way more. And we are still vetting and working on it. And that was about what I wanted to share today.
Thank you. Roberto, but he has no slides. Thank you so much. Very powerful tool. And it could be a very interesting one to implement in our faculty. No, opposite. Oh. Opposite. Now I'm going to introduce Roberto, and I need to introduce Roberto personally because for me it's a very, very personal, I have a personal attachment to him. He has been in my career for more than 10 years. He was my PhD commissioner, and he saved me for many things that were happening in me there. You became a mentor in many ways. And then I also discovered you have been a tremendous ally in this faculty, in the feminist discourses. You have, and I together with María Novas and others, but you have really made a difference in this faculty, and you have gave a lot of space from your positionality. And I think that's really sometimes difficult to recognize, but I very much recognize in you a person who represents Pedagogies of Feminism. So thank you for that, and welcome.
Well, talk about making someone nervous. Yeah, you're very good making. Thank you so much for your words and for, I don't deserve them, but I accept them. I came to the Netherlands 20 years ago from one of the most unequal places in the world, right? And when I came here, I was really enchanted by how equal this country superficially was at first sight, how it, everybody had everything, right? Which is not the case from where I come from. And then slowly, very, very slowly, I could start connecting the dots of how the Netherlands being like this is connected to my country being how it is, how the two places are connected. And they are very connected. I don't have slides, so I hope I can explain what I think clearly. But I always joke with Caroline that we have a very simple task in front of us, which is to dismantle patriarchy, colonialism, and capitalism, you know. So that's a very easy task. I was so happy to see your house, Els, because the house has the foundations that I just mentioned. I see these things, so patriarchy, colonialism, and neoliberalism, as more as a continuum. They are like supporting each other, and they give us the fabric of our reality, right? And I feel that many people think because the world is like this, there is no escape, there is no other alternative. And when I think of feminism, what I see is a potency, and I really thought about that word because I was going to say it's a tool, but it's not a tool. It's a potency, it's a force to maybe not dismantle these things, but to question those things. And I could see that yesterday when everybody was sharing how an ethics of care and an ethics of respect and an ethics that is not extractivist but is adding things, right, is different. And that's what I want the students to realize, that they can, that there is another world possible, right? That and feminism, for me, is really the key, one of the keys, maybe the most important key for me to understand that. Because through feminism, you can understand this, all these things, that the world doesn't have to be competitive, it can be caring. And I think that's really the most important thing that I try to bring to the pedagogy. So people see Caroline and I and Juliana and yourself and Jonathan talking about justice all the time. And I thought justice is an idea that, like a light we are looking for. Yeah, feminism is this potency of knowledge and of people like these amazing women who are here doing these things to show us that these other alternatives. So that's what I hope I made sense. But
yes. Do you all see Maria? No, Maria, to the spotlight. María Novas is, yeah, I think for me she's very special today because I'm going to put her a bit nervous too again. But I'm introducing very different than with those texts. I'm sorry, I cannot do that today. You needed to be here. You have been a person for 7 years or more even, if I'm right, in this faculty, fighting this every day, practicing this every day. The way you left us and the way we let you go, it's at the core of us a depth to bring you back here to talk about this, because any feminism that we are able to track in this faculty is because of you and your work together with Amy Thomas, Roberto Rocco and others. And I know you are recently a mother and you are recently a person who had a lot of effort to come here for us. So thank you for that, coming all the way from Switzerland, which we lost her for, and she went to ATH, which we will not forgive. And I brought her back today because there is no right to talk about pedagogies of feminism without having you in this table. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Irene. Yeah, I want to thank to the incredible organizing team of this Feminist Week, and especially to you, that you were the person that was in touch with me. I thought I would not come, honestly. Here I am. And I'm honestly happy to be here because of this reason. So thank you for organizing this, that I will never think it will happen. I'm not so optimistic anymore, but yeah, I was a feminist, but I didn't know anything about being a teacher. And when I joined the chair of history of architecture and urban planning here at UDEP as a researcher, then thanks to the maternity leave for a colleague, I was offered the opportunity to teach the history seminar here at the faculty. And this was the context in which I started teaching. I started to learn how to teach. This is a very interesting PhD thesis by Daniela Arias Laurino, She defended it at the Universidad Politécnica de Catalunya in 2018. And there she analyzes the architectural narratives, how they have been built in very relevant history books. And she includes some very interesting quantitative analysis, because sometimes this is the way to understand the huge inequality that is going on in this field. And this graph I bring here, I highlight here, is the book of Kenneth Frampton, the fourth edition in Spanish, that is from 2009. I would say the title in English is a bit different. Modern Architecture, a Critical History, I will insist. And in this book of more than 1,000 names, only 16 are women architects. This means 1.5% of all the names in front of 98% of, and there are some that are teams of mixed teams. I think the fifth edition that was released afterwards is better, but still, I mean, this was the context very recently. And this is a book that is used in Spanish education, in Spanish architectural education, a lot. So when starting teaching, I was very lucky because I had also a feminist colleague, Amy Thomas, who was responsible of the lectures by then, and together we started to envision something different. We talk about this experience in this chapter that was published in a book we co-edited with Roberto together, Teaching Design for Values. You can find it open access. I won't elaborate on this because Amy already talked about this during the seminar yesterday. And yeah, it's open access for everybody, but we try to document and to write about and reflect upon our experience later on. And then I decided to experiment with my own seminar, and in the description, you know that in the seminar, students need to register to choose one of the tutors, and this was my description. My seminar was about the history of architecture and urban planning with a focus on social and political history, gender theory and cultural studies, social values in architecture and urban design, especially those developed in connection with the feminist movement over the centuries, while documenting the hidden history of women's devalued appropriated work in the architectural world. And during those 4 years, I witnessed the production of not only one, but many excellent architectural history theses. This is one of them by Susanna Schroeder's, The Back Room, which documents the rooms where the living domestic workers in South Africa were living during apartheid. It was a very powerful history thesis that actually it was selected for an exhibition later on African architecture here at the faculty. Also this one by Julia Garcia, who is in the audience, by the way, on the hidden spaces of Les Jaqueteres. Les Jaqueteres were the women in Valencia that were sewing jackets during Franco dictatorship. This was an informal work that was, they were going to the factory, they were taking the jackets, come back home, and then in those domestic spaces they were, include or set up a kind of workshop hidden from the public sphere where they were working, and then bring back the jackets to the factory and get paid. So this was informal work. Of course, there is no official formal record. So Julia had to talk to former jaqueteres to document these histories, and some local historians from her neighborhood in Benimaclet in Valencia. And thanks to that, the story of these hidden spaces could be written. Or this one by Olivia Jakowska. Olivia documented the history of the Women's Office at the Department of Urbanism in the municipality of Vienna that was established in 1992. This was a quite unique case. Actually, the city has been known later on for his approach to gender mainstream planning in urban design. And the history of this office started with an exhibition. We knew that this exhibition happened, this was documented, but nobody knew what the exhibition was about. And in the municipal archive, there were no records again. So We contacted the organizers of the exhibition. They are still alive, so we interviewed them, and the photographers that were part also, and they went through their personal archives. They found the information, and thanks to that, Olivia was able to write this story that later became a journal article that is also available open access if you wanna read it. And in parallel to this teaching experience, other projects that were going on in collaboration with other researchers, like Lidevai Tumers, who also was here yesterday, and Setare Norani. Lidevai, during those years, also was busy collecting the archive of the network Vrouwenbouw en Woning, which is now part of the National Collection of Architecture and Urban Planning at the Het Nieuw Institute. And Setare is a researcher at the Het Nieuw Institute, which is now also part of the initiative Collecting Otherwise, which is trying to reframe also the reasons, the values behind the things we consider important and the things we preserve for the future. In this case, in the National Archive. Some of this experience we wrote about them again to not lose the track. In this paper that was presented last year in the International Congress of Architecture and Gender in Valencia. And here we reflect on how this way of doing research and teaching in a way was so special, because in the end was bolstering the collection of more archives and hidden histories and so on. So it's like an unfinished work. Once you start doing it, you start finding more information. So this way of transferring otherwise, in the end, makes possible bringing more stories, more diverse stories to light. And this is one example. And I bring it here because she was a student in this faculty. I don't know if you ever heard about her, but Gusse Schröder-Gratama, she was a student at TU Delft at the beginning of the 20th century, by the end of the 1910s, in the beginning of the 1920s. And she never graduated because, by then women were considered too old to get married if they were studying for too long time, and this was the case in technical studies. But then she became like a kind of advisor or architectural representative of the Dutch Housewives Association. And it was when going through the family archive with her granddaughter, we were suspecting that she was also the architect behind her house. We knew that she built in a way, but we could not prove it with documents, because the plans in the municipal archive were signed by a male engineer from the town in Breda. Still, there were pictures like this one where she was proudly posing next to the construction work. And in the end, when digging into this case, like her granddaughter called me one day and she told me, Maria, we can prove it, because what I found a poem written by her daughter-in-law for her 50th wedding anniversary that was saying, in 1956, who's built based on her own design, her own house in Breda. So this family poem was the documental proof, like was a kind of everyday product, right? Like not an architectural product, let's say. It was the documental proof that allowed us to prove that she was not only an advisor, but she was also a hidden architect in a way, even if she never had the opportunity to formally build. And this story is published in this book, Women in Architecture, where Lara also plays a role as an editor. So I want just to finish by saying that what I learned through all these processes, and for me it's the most important thing when teaching, is that expanding what we think architecture is, expanding what the sources are for building knowledge, and creating the spaces for those voices, for those people that have been traditionally marginalized from the production of knowledge, is the most important thing for me. And in the process, this has helped me to legitimize the students' knowledge, that sometimes thinks that the ideas are, not part of the canon, so not so important, so I won't get a good grade. That's not true. Your ideas are universally relevant and legitimate, so please keep teaching us how to do our work. Thank you.
And now you know why I invite her and brought her from Switzerland. And last but not least, Lara, it was again an honor to bring you back. You have been extensively here. We haven't met, of course, any of you when actually you were here. We crossed paths, Maria and I. I was recently joining this faculty. But to me, you now mean a lot. And I could also not engage in creating a panel about pedagogies of feminism without you. There is this kind of lingering network of feminists trying to engage in giving back stories. And I think you are one core of it and one heart of it. And to me, bring you back to Delft to talk about your experience and your positioning with all my profound respect to your work. Because she's an institution of pedagogies of feminism to me. I'm getting you nervous too. I want to give you word, and I want you to give you the last space to open the debate afterwards. So thank you, Lara.
All right, talk about nervous and embarrassing and all of that. There have already been so many things said, and we'll luckily have time to talk about all those things extensively, and I look forward to that. I don't know if that's a phone, that's my phone, that's feedback, but for today I wanted to keep it kind of a little tight and a little short as a teacher of architecture, but also from the position that I had in Delft and from my graduation. So I graduated here in '98, and this was 2 years after the Emancipatieraad had been shut down because emancipation was done. Just so you all know, right? We're done. And then I want to rewind just a couple years before then, because I had completed my bachelor's in the US in '93 and then worked for a year. And my bachelor education was filled with incredible women, teachers, probably close to half and half. I'd have to go through the list, but close to it. And in '94, I landed here, and I had to really look for the women teachers. I mean, I hunted through the building. I really did. And they were not there. But then I heard these rumors, and these rumors were about the Department of Women's Studies. That was here in the 1980s. And they had invited people to give lectures, Adele Santos, Anna Bofill, Lara Termes, Zaha Hadid, that's one of the most famous pictures. They had readers that talked about women's space in the city. They talked about ritual and place and how we navigated through the cities. And Anna Vos has already been named. Heidi de Mare was her colleague in that Department of Women's Studies. And they had these groups, these networks. They had their knitting circle, which was an excellent way to respond. But somehow they had been kind of pushed out of the building. And so by the time I came in here, when I was hunting for their office, it was always empty because they were already moving out. It was a loss. But I don't think we at the time could have appreciated what that loss was because we were of another generation. And so there were all these incredible things that have been recently coming up on display again. But my generation, in all the rhetoric of emancipation being done, in the work floor of students, where we were half and half at least, and often with the women taking the lead, we're confident that once we were out in the world, we would be valued for who we were as designers, as thinkers. And unfortunately, you know, after all of this beautiful emancipation, these are pieces that I'm digging out now in the archives from the 1970s and 1980s. They were published in journals. And that matched with what I had learned in the States, with so many books exhibitions that were giving all this attention to women's studies and women's issues. So we did kind of feel, well, you know, we can get there. Mid-90s, mid-2000s, slow and steady kind of depletion of feminist thinkers, slow and steady realization that we were not moving up in the world, or we had to kind of take shifts or move sideways. And then this position was shown by Florencia Fernandez Cardoso in 2021. I have been teaching in Antwerp since 2014. She did a PhD where she did, you know, all that counting that Maria just showed from Frampton, but she did it across a whole bunch of different, you know, Encyclopedia of Architecture, Frampton, Architecture of the 20th Century. And the black parts, those are the total people mentioned. And then those yellow parts are the total women mentioned, and that includes all the women mentioned, patrons, you know, people who happened, I guess, to kind of be part of a project temporarily. And then the red ones, those are the women architects and designers. And these are the books we're teaching from. So aside from our own trajectory and our own confidence that began to fail as a teacher since 2014 in Antwerp, where I had the lead over the history of architecture theory, I was faced with this as the standard books. So instead, what we try to do now in the classes is we open up a lot, and it really resonates with what Roberto was also saying, is like you make sure that those voices are there, you identify the problem. Fortunately, we are moving forward in time, and now, thank you for all of you being here, we're beginning to actually acknowledge that there are women who have been erased. Julia Morgan, how many of you know Julia Morgan as a name or as a designer? Can I see hands? So what if I tell you that she designed over 600 houses? 600 houses. And was the first woman accepted to the École des Beaux-Arts. And she was accepted because she was an American. And the French felt they're a little masculine anyway, so she'll probably be okay. A church. We learn about Frank Lloyd Wright. We don't know her work. And so it continues. And it makes sense to me when you're teaching in the 30s, and this is the image of all the people you're teaching, that you might forget a few of the examples. But as we move forward to today, I'm a little frustrated at times that, you know, the Broadacre, kind of the Frank Lloyd Wright studio is still a model. And so we look at these singular visionaries and everyone clusters around and we all bow down. And this is just not enough for the multivocal, multi-layered, multi-perspectival practice that is architecture. So to me, this is what the feminist pedagogy is also about. It's not about only identifying the women, although I'm really grateful that it's happening, and I find it really important that it's happening. It's also about knitting them back into the tapestry and beginning to undermine that kind of, you know, visionary position, to understand that all of you together are going to be in building teams. Some of you may end up in city planning services. Some of you may end up as patrons, as developers, as curators, as moderators, as editors, and that we begin from the idea of the teaching to value that kind of big tapestry that together builds an architecture project. Is that?
I say it was the least but not the last. Okay, now starts the moment when we are going to open the floor. And no Mentimeters. This is live, on live questioning. Please. Any question? Any comment? I think Renske is going to do some exercise with the staircase.
Do you hear me? Okay. Oh, now you do. First of all, thank you for all the presentations. I was really fascinated by the house metaphor, with the fundaments being capitalism, sexism, and so on. And I was thinking about what this implies. And also, at the same time, I felt like because you in the introduction said there's some type of hibernation going on in the feminist discussions. So I felt like, are we reaching a sort of maximum of feminism, what we can achieve with these fundaments? And do we need to break down one of these fundaments and possibly damage the house on top? Or what are your views on that, and how do you feel about where we are now?
I think Els starts the responding. And then I can build the house.
Roberto.
I think...
Hello?
Yeah.
I think Roberto gave the answer. It's he's doing that together with Caroline, and it's tearing down capitalism, patriarchy, sexism, whatever, colonialism, racism, and it's. I think it's not that we have to tear down our house and tear down the fundaments, but to realize that it's so absurd that on one hand we have the Declaration of Rights of Man, and at the same time, you see, it doesn't work because it is based on exploitation. So our idea of wealth and comfort and whatever is based upon exploitation. So somehow, I think you have to kind of rebuild the house and the fundaments by taking things out and trying to, well, and this is quite easy. That's Roberto, you said that's the only thing we have to do. So that's kind of, you wake up in the morning and say, well, let's, you know, a mouse can eat a house. So just bit by bit. Small steps, we have the time.
Yes.
One thing I also wanted to say that that adds to this, because it's easy, right? But it's also easy to forget. This is what that long feminist winter refers to. There had been all these kind of amazing things happening, and then there's a generation who really thought we would go out and be treated equally. And the disappointment from that also broke some things here and there, I think, in some women who just decided to leave the field. But I am so heartened by the number of people here today, by the number of men here today, by the attention that is given to not just a female-male binary, but the idea of feminism as an ethics of care that allows for those multiple voices. So congratulations to you all for caring, too.
I also maybe wanted to add to that, as you were saying about narratives, maybe. We have this one big narrative that we've come from, also with the canon. And I think that feminist pedagogies really opens the door in seeing the complexity behind all of that. So the complexity behind all the fundaments. And it's in recognizing that there are many narratives and many complexities, and also daring to tackle them, that we can use feminism actually to deconstruct the house and this intersectionality.
I'm going to open again for questions, but first responding, because I think I put the hibernation question there. But I think, to me, personally, it's really about finding what is your realm of action. What is the area you can act? Don't take what you cannot do. That's also a feminist value. Care for yourself. And then, through what you can do, what can you do? And in that sense, that's how I operate every day. And that's how this whole week happened. It was really like, I want to do something and I want to engage with people, and then start building up. And then all of a sudden 200 people got subscribed, and then all this whole wall is full of people. So it's really about finding your realm and finding in a healthy manner. Questions, please, comments, ideas. There, Laura. Sometimes hard to see.
Thank you. I'm wondering, for the ones who are teaching or have taught, because also BK can be this nice, happy bubble, like we're under the roof of the human rights, but we're also under the roof of the BK faculty, where it's very pleasant. But how do you prepare students to bring their values that inside this building we all share, and to confront the outside world with them? Because it's very easy to jump on the train of practice once you graduate and lose them, or
I'm not so sure we all share the same values. My heart is warm from seeing all of you here. I'm thinking of all the people who are not here and who we have to reach out to, because they are under the false impression that nothing's going to change. I just have to learn my skills and I have to go to the job market and do my job. And I want to highlight one of the many things that Els said. You used the word absurd. And I think the house that you were talking about is absurd. So it's not like we are trying to demolish something that's really good. However, I want to bring this here, that we have to reach out to a lot of people who are not here today. I was diversity officer for 2 years in this faculty, and it was really difficult to have people discuss these things. So we have to find our community, and this is our community. Let's make it larger. And I don't know how, by the way. I really don't.
You look at me, but I don't know how either. but it's happening. But Laura, I have been 10 years in offices. I was not in this bubble, and I actually did not study here. But I do recognize a problem in practice that comes from here, because I was working, receiving the new graduates in the office, and I have seen them systematically burning out of the dream of what they do as a graduation project and how they land, in this case, many times in my team, and they burn out of what they have to do and how, it's a crash. And I think we are not yet doing that. And that's an agenda I have. And I think very much relates to hack, to learn how to hack that system that is going to burn you out, and to learn to navigate what of self-care conditions you have and how those values that you bring can drive you to take small decisions under the realm of decisions you can take. Because it's a dream to say that you can get out of here and take decisions. It's not the reality of it.
I was also thinking about that in terms of, because you refer to, I was also a student here, to this as a happy place. And in a way it's true, because we're working on this amazing graduation project and you're imagining something. But at the same time, it's not this happy place. And there are so many things I think we can do here, also in the faculty or in teaching architecture, to make this gap between what's out there and what's happening or seemingly happening here different. And that has to do with involving more our bodies when we're in our education. Not just sitting behind the desk or behind the computer, but going on site, connecting to the people there, participating already when you're working together. This is all this, and I saw it on your drawing. The next big thing are all these tiny little things. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what we're doing and what we're working. If you tend to all those tiny little things, I think that's the way through. And then maybe, I don't know, we can actually say, okay, this is not really this happy place what we're in here right now. And there doesn't need to be like a big destruction or a complete teardown, because this complete teardown is maybe only making us angry and making us, I don't know, not knowing where to go. But if you start from all these little tiny steps, I think there's a lot we can do together.
More ideas, more questions. Yes.
I'm here because my wife asked me to join. I studied here as well. I'm teaching, and I'm now an urban designer in the community of Den Haag. And we have a team there of 15 people, and from that team is 50% female. And I see also project leaders there, and there are a lot of female project leaders that do a much better job than the male, because they are quite dominant in saying this should be done, and female in a different way achieve their goals. Dus I want to project it, but I'm not a female, and I know they will also face the degradation in hierarchy often. But I see a change, and I think if you look at the timeline, it's a matter of time. If we keep on having a kind of stable system in which we live in, that male and female maybe balance themselves out. You can be against it, and I oppose also to say something about it, but I see in the practice that it's happening. But I see also in the architecture that it's different. There's a lot of offices in which there's a lot of hierarchy, and you burn out because you give everything, but you're not in demand to make a change. And maybe in urban design, in which it's much more about social equality and not the ILD from a person, maybe it's a different discourse, what's happening. Just I want to bring it to the table, but then the last thing is we lived in the past in a masculine way of doing things, and I think we are changing now to more the feminine way of doing. No matter if it's a male or a female doing such an approach, but that we look more into the sensitivity of approaching things. Can you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think Lara wants to...
So this is part of the tricky part, I think, of these conversations. So you're turning to a very logical construction of the masculine and of the feminine roles, which I think are often part of the discussion in practice settings. The Netherlands definitely has a very strong discourse on male leadership, female leadership maybe a little less so, but there are also a lot of preconceptions that come in that. So I would personally try to hold to the idea of feminist leadership, because that can come from any of our more than two genders that we do discuss now, and they do talk about values that you're placing there rather than ways that you're working. I do recognize what you're saying, that in urban design there are often more women involved, more diverse teams, which does, I think, have something to do with these canonical histories that Amber was also talking about. Perhaps also in the Netherlands very strongly with that kind of Stararchitect period, which came up also in the 90s, this Super Dutch. And I think the challenge for the pedagogies is to really reveal the multiplicity of these jobs. And then to come back maybe to Laura's comment on that also, is that I guess as teachers, many of us hope that the values we talk about, the dilemmas we open up, the questions we raise, do kind of live with you and develop with you. The world is not perfect in 25, even less so than in 24 and in 23, but at least there's a whole group of people trying at this point to really rethink how we work, with who we work, to what degree we allow this exploitation to enter our lives and our careers.
Yes, just to build on what Lara was saying, this is something I also try to explain to my students in history. History is not linear. It's not a history of progress. We are not building something that is better and better and better. No end. This doesn't happen. There are multiple stories. There are different civilizations that experience history differently. What can be seen in a nation by a group of people as a time, of a period of progress, can be the decline of other people. Even groups within society experience history differently. And in relation to practice, there is work to do in the Netherlands. The quantitative data are not very positive. I mean, we can see more diversity, maybe because before it was not there. But data from 2021 is below 30% the number of women that are practicing architecture in the Netherlands. This is not good. There are many European countries that are above that number. That's one thing. If we see a position of leadership, it's even worse, of course. And another important note, and this is something I also try to explain to my students, the faculty is not the real world. When you go out and you start practicing, you can get a burnout. The numbers of women leaving architecture are very high, are higher every day because there are more female graduates. That's the reality in the world. And especially in reproductive age, when you have children, care responsibilities, etc. Your partner earns more than you have to pay childcare, and so on. So please be aware that things are not always better than they were in the past. Actually, we know that through history also. In the 20s, there was a feminist wave. It was repressed in the 30s. There was a war in the 40s, 50s, huge conservative wave. Women were abolished, were forbidden to work in public service in the Netherlands until 1958. This was made in the Netherlands. I mean, this was not a policy, but a number of different policies, circulars, regulations, and so on. And many people don't know the story. So, yeah, just the awareness sometimes when teaching is also something important. We need to also be aware.
I also have to say I'm an urban designer, and I was operating in architectural practice as an urban designer because usually it's this department in the office. But yeah, I experienced a different story. But I think different stories fit together.
Can I maybe also add a small thing to that?
Where is the voice?
Thank you for opening that, because I think also it gives the opportunity to talk about these things. And I also think that it's kind of a dangerous thing indeed to say that maybe it's getting better. And I think that's also part of the feminist winter that we've been in or we are in. And I think it also distracts us from the question of the system being wrong and the practice being actually wrong. So this hierarchy that you're talking about, that's maybe less in urban design than in architecture, is what's burning out people. And it's not just about women anymore. It's about way more than that. It's about people that are not from Western background that are being exploited. I know stories from friends that they get paid €10 less. No, 10 is a lot. I think 2 or 4 euro less an hour because they don't speak Dutch. And then they say it's to encourage them to learn the language, but we all know it's to exploit them. So I think, as you were saying, Lara, and also Roberto, that feminism or feminist pedagogy is a lens to look at these things and to change actually that, to look at the root.
We have to wrap up. But there is a last one. Can I have a last one?
It's not a question. I think it's just an addition to the ongoing conversation because, I mean, it's good to bring up this point, and I'm glad that there are places where this thing is happening, that we are advancing, and you know how you say it's difficult to say that we are progressing, but okay, maybe we can just idealize and we can be happy about where we are progressing, but there are also so many different places where we are not progressing. And I have experienced from working in these offices where there are women leaders, and yet the women in the firm are not part of client meetings, and you're not talking to clients, and you're sidelined. Why? Because women don't participate in these discussions. You're not part of the table. So I don't know, I just want to highlight the point that it's great that we are moving forward, but I think we should keep talking about these things only because we should not stop moving forward, right? We don't want to be in this endless winter. And even if there was this winter, we should come out of it and we should keep going forward and we should keep talking about it so that there is no place on the entirety of this earth where such a thing is still happening. And it's good to hear that, I don't know, to hear all of this and that we are talking about all of this and there's a platform where we can talk about all of this.
Thank you. Okay, it is time to wrap up. I don't know where I lost the... I think you have it. There we are. Okay, so to wrap up this, first I need to close beyond talking about the BK Feminist Week, but maybe this is an end of our winter. I think there has been an end, and I think in 2019, 2018, we saw many activists doing a lot of things in this faculty. COVID killed it. And they could not pass on anyone. Well, this week is going to be a legacy of how can we keep going, how can we keep engaging with each other, how can we keep co-creating together those values that matter in the way we design, in the way we govern, in the way we develop policy making, in the way we think in our street, in our house, and in our city. I think, to me, this is a week to celebrate, but also to reivindicate. It's a week to engage with each other and to get to know each other. It's a week of plurality, and it's a week to really understand that we all deserve a space to care for each other. And I think this faculty should be that caring space. And maybe it's believing in a bubble, but I want to build a bubble, and I want to build a safe bubble. So that's why this week is here. It's not just me, it's an immense, tremendous amount of women working behind it, and also men. And I think it's a very important event to support. So please give us some love and take care of us.
So to wrap up, I want to thank Irene today for hosting the session and all the guests that we had today. I would like to invite you to our next session, which is in 2 weeks, on March the 18th, called Archipri and the Future of Design Education. It is in corresponding to the new exhibition that is up with the chosen best graduation projects from 2024. We will have a panel with some of the deans of the design, architecture, landscape, and urbanism schools, universities that we have in the Netherlands, and some students sharing their perspectives and their projects. So feel free to come, join us again in 2 weeks, and thank you very much, all of the panel and you today, and have a great evening. Thank you.